The WDC explains it all. Revising for understanding. University learning is more advanced than school or college, and if you're preparing for university exams, your revision strategies need to be more advanced too. To do well, you'll need to focus not just on recall, that is, whether you can remember information accurately, but also on demonstrating that you understand the material at a deeper level and can use it to solve problems and questions. Just learning it by rote and regurgitating it in the exam isn't going to be enough, so we need to ensure that our revision strategies support this deeper learning. Let's start with looking at some common approaches to revision you might be using and why they might not quite be up to the job. Reading and rereading your lecture slides, notes and books. This is a very common strategy, and it can feel good. As you read, you're encountering material you've seen before, and to your brain, it feels familiar, like you know it, you've learned it. There's two issues here though. Firstly, reading is quite a passive strategy for revision. Your eyes are moving over the page, and hopefully you're taking information in, but if you've seen the material before, it's not really engaging your brain deeply, and without actively working with the information in some way, it's not becoming part of your mental map of the subject. And secondly, it can lead you to overestimate how well you know the subject. That feeling of familiarity as you read material you've seen before is a fallacy. You're not actively recalling the information, and without the text in front of you, prompting you, you might find you don't actually know it as well as you thought. Recognizing it when it's in front of you isn't the same as really knowing it in depth. Copying information out or highlighting it is an extension of this strategy. It certainly feels like work, and you've a lot to show on the page for the time you've spent, lots of notes and highlighting and underlining. But again, it's quite a passive strategy. You can copy something out without engaging your brain, indeed without even understanding what you're writing at all. It's easy to lose focus and let your attention drift. And before you know it, you've become a human photocopier, or highlighted the whole page in fluorescent yellow. There is some benefit where you're focusing and your brain is actively engaged in making decisions about what to copy and what to leave out, but it's still fairly shallow processing. And what you're rehearsing is a fairly simple skill. The exam doesn't test the motor skills of copying something out, or in most cases, your ability to replicate something in front of you exactly word for word. Repeating something over and over is another common approach. It's true that the more you encounter something, the more familiar you become with it, but just repeating something out of context isn't necessarily going to wear a groove in your memory when the prompt you're using isn't there, and you have to call it without help in a completely different situation. Repeating something, like copying it out, is also a fairly shallow strategy, in that it doesn't demand that your brain processes it deeply. After all, an exam isn't just a test of whether you can regurgitate information, but whether you understand it and can use it. You might also be familiar with what we call mnemonic techniques, strategies like using acronyms, rhymes, visualizations, etc. to remember information. These do work well, and the WDC covers these and other mnemonic techniques elsewhere, but in terms of revising for understanding, they can only go so far. They can really help strengthen your memory and ability to recall, but they won't necessarily help you to prepare to use the information you've memorized to demonstrate deeper understanding. Research has shown that we can memorize anything, even nonsense words, but that doesn't show that you know what you're talking about. What's missing from these strategies is what researchers call desirable difficulty. If revising is too easy or passive, and your mind isn't actively engaged and working hard, then it's probably not learning deeply enough to literally make sense of the new information, making those new connections in your brain. If you're making your brain work harder, it may seem at first that it's not paying off, that you're struggling, getting tired easily, or making mistakes. But desirable difficulty is helping you learn, even when you get things wrong, even when it feels like it's not going well, you're still getting somewhere. So let's look at some revision strategies that use the principle of desirable difficulty and will help you learn the material at a deeper level. 1. Use summary and paraphrase instead of copying things out. Putting information in your own words and making your own decisions about how to summarize it, what to include or leave out, literally makes you learn it on your own terms. To articulate something in your own words, you have to really understand it. So it's a good test of where you're at with the material, as well as making your brain work to integrate it into your knowledge at a deeper level. 2. Rework and present it in different ways. Turn it into something else. Bullet points, a diagram, a mind map, a recording of you talking out loud, a visualization. This draws on the principle of dual coding, not just making you think as you rework it, but giving your brain more than one format to remember it in, enriching your memory with words, pictures, sound, etc. Both paraphrasing and working it into different formats helps keep it flexible too. You might be asked to reproduce some things perfectly from memory, but an exam might also ask you to recall the knowledge in different ways, so this helps keep your thinking flexible and adaptable, focusing on core concepts rather than surface details. 3. Compare it with other accounts. As well as making your own different versions of knowledge, find other people's explanations in other textbooks or online, or work with another student to see how they've made revision notes on it. Comparing and contrasting different explanations might help you fill any gaps and might even work better for you than the original version, but it also gives you multiple perspectives or explanations that enrich your understanding. Synthesizing them all together into your own understanding also requires a very active brain, one which is making sense of and integrating the material into something new. This, and the next 3 strategies, use a principle called elaboration, where your brain is making a richer account and linking knowledge with new details and connections. 4. Explain it to yourself, or to a friend, or the dog. You've probably heard that the best way to learn something is to teach someone else, and it's true. Even if you're just talking yourself through an explanation of a concept, or walking yourself through a process, you're both deepening and testing your understanding, but also rehearsing your ability to answer this kind of question you might get in an exam. After all, to test someone's understanding of something, you ask them to explain it. Try doing this first with and then without notes, and check yourself for accuracy in anything you've missed. Even better, try it with a friend on the same course. Each time you do this, you'll probably be adding in new details or seeing new things, enhancing and deepening your understanding. 5. Interrogate it with questions. When trying to explain something to yourself, you'll naturally come across things you're stumbling over, don't quite understand, or get wrong. Well, that's fine. We learn from our mistakes and we can harness them. Take those things you don't know and turn them into questions. Ask yourself why or how something happens, what it means, how it works, why it's important. And then, of course, try and follow up with the answers. This helps to ensure you're learning deeply, as well as giving you a sense of where you're at with understanding the material and some direction as to what you might need to revise more. 6. Apply it to concrete examples. Where you're working with ideas, concepts, or abstract theories and models, try applying them to different case studies or examples. This will help add detail that helps you remember them, but also enhances your understanding of the underlying principles as you use them in different ways. Don't get too caught up in the details though. You're trying to understand the underlying concepts through applying them in different ways, not memorize surface features. But having a few examples up your sleeve that weren't in the lecture might come in handy in the exam though. 7. Interleave topics. You might feel that really immersing yourself in one topic at a time would work best for deep understanding, but actually, switching between different topics regularly can really help your learning. Not only does it stop you getting bored, it makes you break it down and revisit topics at intervals, which helps with retention and helps you make new links and connections between topics. Exam questions might ask you to combine knowledge in different ways to reach an answer, so keeping it flexible during revision is key. Finally, make up your own exam questions. If you have access to past papers, you could analyse the kinds of questions set and what they're testing, but even if you don't, consider. If you were the lecturer trying to test students' understanding of this topic, what question would you set, and how would you answer it? This strategy not only puts you in the lecturer's shoes and helps you anticipate the exam, it also helps you think about what kind of knowledge you need to revise, how you might be asked to use it, and at what level. And of course, you can practice rehearsing different answers even if there's no past papers. And you never know, great minds think alike, and you might find that you've anticipated what's in the real exam. Revising for an exam isn't just about memory. These strategies will help you ensure that you're learning for deeper understanding too, and be better prepared to answer the exam questions at a higher level. They are perhaps harder work for your brain than the more passive strategies you might have used before, but they're far more effective. If you're working, it's working.